everybody. This is Quinn from Fabricated Quilts, and welcome to our Sundays with Kate Facebook Live. Hi, if you're out there, I see that we've got some viewers starting to pop in, so let me know who you are and I'll be saying hello. If you can hear everything fine and if your picture looks good, please let me know. That's going to help us make sure that we give you a great viewer experience. So I'm going to see if I can adjust my camera just a little now that you're here so that we can maybe get in a little tighter. Hi, Judy. I've been thinking about you this week. I have a design I've been working on for you, Miss Judy. Hi, Linda. Hi, Marie. Oh, Marie, I'm so sorry I haven't responded yet. Sorry, it's been a busy week. Hi, Noreen. Hi, Dawn. So today we are going to discuss something called the egg and dart, and this is Robbie Carpenter was someone who sent me a request for some of this information, and it's such a classic, amazing border that I felt like it was worth doing a little bit of information for planning for this because a lot of people like it. It's great for small spaces or even for larger borders. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity. So one of the first templates that we're going to use is this simple oval, and this is the one from the Fun and Fancy collection, which has my book and a lot of different designs using this template. The first thing we have to think about when we start planning for a design is the spacing that the design requires. Obviously, that's always some of our most important considerations. This template sews out the oval at 3 inches from this side to this side, and it sews out at 1.5 inches this side to this side. So let me show you a quick picture so you'll see where we're going here. Here, I'll try to hold it up a little bit. All right, so this is the oval, and this is half of the oval right here. And let me show you the space relationship real quick. This is 1.5, this opening right here. If you go to 1.5, actually there's no overlap. Even though it shows right here that there is, that's just the wiggle on the spacing gauge. If this opening is 1.5, right? And we have that big of an opening right there, they're going to kind of meet in the middle because this is 3/4, right? So think about that. If this is 1.5 and we're only sewing half of it, then that's 3/4 height that this oval has right here. So if this is 3/4 and that's 3/4, then right there in the middle, they're not going to overlap at all. They're going to kiss, but they won't overlap. So just by making the space a little narrower, we will get some overlap. And the reason we get so much more is because one will overlap a certain amount, and then the other will double that by overlapping the other side. So the space in the middle is going to be twice as big as whatever the meet in the middle space would be. Okay, so I have a space that's already marked for this at the 1.25, and I'm going to show you how we do it. And right now, I'm just going to show you the basic movement of the design and alignment, and then we'll talk about how to plan for maybe centering a design or making it fit in a border. We'll talk about that afterwards. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll get ourselves all set on this first space. Normally, if I'm going to do this and I don't care what the spacing is, then I'm just going to start sewing the bottom at whatever reference line I have. So you can see I've marked a straight line, and that straight line is going to be important because I can line up my template right along. So that's going to keep the design nice and straight, nice and even, not going crooked or cockeyed or anything like that. But I'm not going to mark anything. I'm just going to sew half of this oval first. And I'm just going to pay attention to my reference line, and I'll just move down, keeping everybody lined up. So I've got to check back here, make sure that the back is lined up as well. Now you can see right now, this is traditional egg and dart. There's no overlap right here, right? Because the widest part of this arc is where we are, right in the middle. Oh, I got a little tail sticking out. He just wants to say hi. Okay, and we'll do one more, and then we'll show you how you would come back with this design. So at some point, your border would be finished. You would sew all the way along, and then whatever you end up with is whatever you end up with. Okay, so this is the start of it. Let's turn it around so you can see real well. Okay, so there's our look. We've got it touching right there at the boundary line, and it's got a beautiful, nice curve. All right, so what we would have to do if we were in the seam right here, or we were out at the end of the border, you could tie off here if you wanted to. Just for our purposes, I'm just going to scoot over to the other side. Now, before I do anything, I'm actually going to take this off, and I'm going to make some markings for you to see. If you have a grid stencil, you could mark with a grid stencil. You could mark 1.5, because this is a 3-inch opening, and that would give you lots of nice reference lines. But for today, I'm just going to do it the easy way. I have already stitched and stitched carefully, and I know that that is the center mark. The biggest, most important thing about making the egg and dart look fantastic and make it look really clean is making sure that your darts are going to line up. So I'm going to line the ruler up, and I'm going to mark right there. Oh, no more talking that one. All right, so let's see. We'll just mark this right on the center. So we want to make sure that the dart is lined up precisely. And right now, if we wanted to check this line as well, we could even just lift up our foot real quick, and I can just stick this right under there and make sure that I have a nice reference line, make sure that I sewed straight. And that looks pretty good, so I'm just going to go with that. But let's mark the rest of these. We want to mark each one. Now, if you had a large area, would you want to mark these? Yes, you would. Why? Because this design is very precise, and we need those visual references to make sure that it's going to look good. We don't want a wonky diamond in the middle of that design. We want it to be nice and clean and straight. So it's worth doing, taking that little bit of extra time to get that precision that you would want with your design. All right, so let's put our baby back on. Okay, we'll get right in there, make sure our tape. Now, I like to use the non-keyhole side if I don't have to use that side. This is going to be a little smoother, and I'm not going to have any issues with maybe the key popping up or anything else. I always just like to hold it. Also, there's better visual alignment that way. So I'm going to line up the back right here, make sure that center line is lined up on the reference line. Let's see if I can see it. There we go. And right here, I'm going to check also with my first one to make sure that my spacing gauge is going to bring me where I want. Because I want to be sure, and if I'm not sure, I can smush it just a little bit to make sure that my needle is going to hit right where I want it. Okay, and then right after that first one, I should be good. I mean, it's never a bad idea to go ahead and check it, but typically the template's not going to change size, and if you haven't moved or, slipped it around or anything, you should be good. So I'm just going to keep checking that back alignment, making sure that I've got everybody in place. Let's do one more. Get that last one lined up. So you can see that the design is pretty simple. Let's go ahead and take this off. Make sure we did a good job, right? All right. So doesn't that look awesome? Got your diamonds right lined up, nice. So this is how you get that really beautiful visual, is making sure you take that extra time and have these reference lines. So like I said, I do use grid stencils if I'm doing a much larger area, but in a border, you would only probably have to make, 10 to 15 lines. And for that level of precision that I would want, it's totally worthwhile. And then checking with your spacing gauge, if it seems like your fabric is shifting around or you have a big visual disparity, you can smush a little or pull a little to get this right at that quarter, so you'll get this beautiful look right there. Now, the further spacing that I open this to, this is the 1 inch, right? So if I start making the spacing bigger and bigger, what you're going to see is that you'll have a narrower and narrower opening right there. And so always check it. Make sure that you test it. Just draw some lines, the correct width of your border, and then whatever reference lines you need on the side. So let's comment on something else. Let's say that my border is bigger. Maybe the border is out to here. There's nothing that says I can't make a reference line inside the seam of the border and have this beautiful design floating inside of the space and not make it so it's touching right here. This would be touching this if this was the seam, but we could just make this as a reference line and this is the seam, and then you can control that. And then you would have a little bit of free space out here in the border, and then this would float in there, but it wouldn't actually be connected to your seam if you did that. So those reference lines can be manipulated to give you what you want to have. So let me show you the next bit of information. All right, always got to put your key back on. So the next thing I want to show you is, this is the piece that goes inside of that, right? This is going to sew 3 inches from the end to end, as we said, and a 1/2 inch. Let me show you what happens with this inner piece real quick. All right, so let's just put this on the center line right there. So if you can see the very edge of it, right, it already is 3. So if I add a 1/4 inch on this side and a 1/4 inch on that side, then the length of this is now 3.5. And then let's see, what do we have for the width right there? Let's kind of get right to the middle so we can have a nice easy visual. So right there, that is already going to be 2 inches. And then you would add your 1/4 here and your 1/4 here. So for this one, you have a much bigger potential. It's much wider already, so it's going to make a deeper arc, and it is a little bit longer. So I would want to make sure that I plan for that. So this is going to sew out at 3.5, not at 3. So if I needed something that is a better measure, like a 3.5 fits my border better, maybe then this could be a great idea. And if it was too tall, I could lay this on the ruler and I could mark another 1/4 inch below or above in order to shorten the arc if I wanted to. That's a simple way that I could manipulate this to get another size. So I'm going to show you how we sew out with this one. Let me go ahead and we'll tack this real quick. Okay, lift up that needle, lift up our presser foot, and we'll pull this out. And we'll get everybody right back in place so we can pull up that bobbin thread. So then pull both sides, not just this loop right here, but pull this side, and that's where your bobbin will pop up. Since we've already stitched everything in, I'm just going to clip it, and you'll see the bobbin will draw away, and then I can just clip these top threads because they're already stitched in. Okay, make sure we have no loosey-goosey threads anywhere. And we can have a nice long bobbin tail. All right, so right here we've got a wider space. This one is the 2-inch space, and so we'll just sew that out, and that way you can see how you might have to manipulate your hold on this one a little bit more than you would, because the square one is just a little bit easier to hold because this one has no edges. Your hand kind of gets in the way, so we'll share that with you real quick. So again, I'll line it up. And you see right here, I could put a ruler on and I could make another line just like that white chalk line. Whenever I mark on templates, a lot of people know I like to use this wet erase marker. If I were to make another line below the middle where it touches to right there, what you're going to get is right here where these touch perfectly and there's no overlap. If we were to make marks down here, what we'll get is we will get a circle that will overlap, because this will go beyond. It'll come down here, and then when you line up the next one, it'll come back around. So you'll get a little oval overlap right there if you were to extend below the midpoint on any of these ovals. And you can do that on this one. You just would have to mark it down below. You could make a 1/4 inch mark below or a 1/2 inch below. And then instead of getting a dart, you'll get a cute little oval right there as it connects to the next one. Okay? All right, so let's get sewing. So use the ruler first, and then you can position the foot, get everything lined up. All right, so I'm going to show you right now, if I hold here, obviously, I'm sewing that way, so I've got to make sure that the pressure is down here. So get your fingers kind of up in the loop, and you're going to have to guide it, because it's round, it's just not as convenient of a hold. So maybe now I can hold it back here with my finger, and that'll help give me that stability to move along the sandwich. So just a little bit different when you're using the oval like that. It's not as easy to hold. So you're going to sew kind of halfway, and then I'll be holding back here. And that'll help give you the best amount of pressure that you can have, which will help your design look better. So now I can shift my fingers. I'm going to move these out of the way a little bit. Okay. So we've only gotten 3 of these in here, and you can already see how much longer that these are than the previous one. So that's one of the cool things about these simple ovals, is being able to have 2. And what you can do, I kind of made a mess here. You can see I got ink on my fingers, but I wrote the size. You could even write it on there with a Sharpie, because that's not marked on there, but it's important to know what your sizing of this is for your own planning purposes. And then that way you'll just have that information right at your fingertips. All right, so let me show you what we got. Wow, you can see how much bigger these are. Aren't they great? They're huge by comparison. This looks so dainty, and this is nice and big. So let's go ahead. We'll mark our lines just like we did before. Let me scoot some of these things out of our way so we won't be trapped. So I'm just going to lift up my foot, and I'm going to stick this right under there, right on the line. So I'm making this right square to that line so that I can get this line in. Okay. And then I'll do the same thing with these other ones, making sure I'm square to the border reference line so that I can get a nice, pretty dart right there. One more. Alrighty, looks good. So I'll use that reference line, and I'll just sew straight up, get myself right up there. one of the things that's nice about working with this shape is I can easily manipulate and then the template's off. There is no key, there is no inside, but the trade-off is that additional hand work that you have to do in order to manipulate these. So I'm going to answer Robbie's question, since this definitely was something she had a strong interest in. If I was working on a border and I wanted this design to be exactly symmetrical from one side of the border to the other side, I would mark the center of the design and I would sew out to the edge and I'd sew back to the center. And then when I got to the center, I would sew out this way and I would mark everything and I'd sew back to keep everything aligned. That would make the design continuous, and that would also mean that your design would have the ability to be perfectly centered. So then it's not that you'd have to cut your threads or manipulate everything, but I would sew out the one way, then mark all the centers like that so that everything would match, and I'd sew back from that outer edge, sew back this way to the center, and then I would just sew across the top and then mark back to the center, and then everything would be perfectly symmetrical and you'd have everything that you need. Yes, so I'll comment on Jackie's comment. Thank you, Jackie. You're super helpful. It is a Fond & Porter ceramic chalk pencil. It has an integrated eraser. I like it because it makes a very fine line, and I am out of lead. So as Jackie said, I'm going to have to buy some more because this is my last little bit. My other one is totally empty. Let me show you some other things that I use for marking. This is General's pastel chalk, and that's actually what I've used to mark these right here. So you can see this will just erase off of there as well, right? So those will come off. And then I love my Choco liner as well. If I have to manipulate the fabric a lot, I would only mark a small area with this, but this dressmaker wheel does make a very fine mark, and I have an iron off pounce in here, which makes it very, very easy for it to come off, which I do really like. And then if I'm doing anything that is dark, let me show you what else I like to use. So you can see there's some blue lines on here. So that is the Styla pen right here. And the reason I like the Styla pen is this is a roller ball. So sometimes some gets caught on the fabric, but this one is so great. It just rolls right along. And the Styla pen comes with the blue ink, which is water erase, and it also comes with the purple erase. So you just have to look and find whatever, one that you prefer. It'll say it on there somewhere. I don't know where. I guess when I bought it. But you can, you can just see that's blue and the purple one looks purple. So it's quite obvious which is which. So I used to always recommend this. If you can find this, this is the Collins Air Erase. I love it, but I have not been able to find it lately. And somebody did tell me that they were not in business anymore. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, so let's sew. We've got everything marked, so we're ready to go. So let's get lined up. So right here, we're counting on this being the correct position. So always with that first one, I want to check and make sure that I have that correct 1/4 inch space so that I'll come right back to where I want. So it looks like I don't actually. See that? It's really, really going to be tight. So maybe my line here was not very good. So let's talk about the spacing gauge. This width is a 1/4 inch. So if I'm positioning it on the outside of this plastic, that's more than a 1/4 inch. So what I need is the very tip, the very edge of the plastic to be centered right where I want the needle to rest. And this side should be flush against the template. So it can't be canted. It's got to be essentially where the edges are together like that, where this flat edge is flat up against the template. So that's what I'd be looking for when I set that on there. And now we can sew. Okay, sorry, that was a lot of talking, huh? Very nice. We got right in where we wanted to. Get everybody lined up. Perfect. right, here's our next one. We don't really need anything. There's nothing we're trying to match on that side, huh? All right, so I'm going to flip this around without shifting anything because I want to show you something about this alignment as we look at it. So before I stitch this in, I can see this stitch line right there, and that's about 1/4 inch. And I know that my stitch line is going to be 1/4 inch. So right away, I know that that is a 1/2 inch of overlap. And I want you to look at how big the diamond is right here. It's pretty big compared to the little overlap that we have in there. Okay, and so when we do the next one, I want you to remember that, and we're going to compare that to our next design. All right, let's see if we have any questions real quick.
So I'm not getting any questions over here, even the things that you're seeing. This is, I can see all your video, but no.
All right. Oh, okay, so let me talk about my teal spacing gauge. I'm pretty excited about it, you guys. So I just got mine, and this awesome spacing gauge is now the featured item with the Fun and Fancy collection. Woohoo! I'm super excited about it. So I'm showing it off. I did get mine this week, and I'm so excited about it. And I used to always make my students put a tether or a ribbon or something on their spacing gauge because as soon as you set it down, you could never find it. And I love that it is teal. It's so awesome. Of course, I still like my lanyard because I definitely wear this, you know, while I'm working, and I love how easy when you just press this button, you can just take him off and then he doesn't go anywhere and I know where he is. But I love that it's teal. It's just so great. So anyway, it's out there, and definitely look for that. If you haven't gotten one with your Fun and Fancy, you'll have to buy it separately. But if you're thinking about Fun and Fancy, this is featured with that grouping right now. So if you buy the bundle, you get the awesome teal spacing gauge. All right, so let's see. Oh, so here you go. We'll give you a quick look for comparison. These are the oval, the 3 by 1.5 inch oval, which really can only have a kind of a narrow spacing. And then this is the inside of the oval, and this is a 2-inch space, and you can see it can make quite a bit bigger. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna move on to another template that can make amazing, really fun egg and dart. So it's not quite round. This is not oval, and it's not really round. It's kind of a little bit of a mountain peak. And I do encourage you to use the bigger side, although you can use either one. What would be the difference? So the spacing is 1.5 inch, the height of this, and this is 2. And so what this allows is it allows you to have a much deeper arc with more overlap, because this is going to extend up into the other one more. So we're going to use this one, but like I said, you can use either. And again, I always recommend you play with the spacing and you draw it out on paper before you decide which one that you want to use. So right here, let's just really quickly show you. This is the alignment mark for the needle. So the foot would sink into this hook, and the needle's going to line up right with this line. So this very first reference line on the top is the line that you're using. And from this side to this side, the width of this opening is 3, right? So that's what we're going to plan on. And if you wanted to mark it, you know, at 3-inch increments, then this would measure perfectly. Okay? So that's what we're going to plan on. And if you want... All right. So sorry, we have a little echo in there. All right, let's get started. We'll get our needle pulled up, get our bobbin up to the top, and then we'll just get that seated right in the line. So if you guys remember, I left like a little gap in there. This is the space right here, we're going to say that this is the seam, the white. Now, I marked in a little bit because I know that maybe this won't span this entire space. And so this is where we're going to show what it looks like if it's floating. So in your mind, you're going to imagine that this is your seam, and now our design, our egg and dart, is going to float in the middle. So that's why I have these blue lines marked. That's really convenient with this template because he's got all these straight lines, so I can move him in or out just by using the lines, okay? All right, and we'll get lined up down here too. Now, very careful. Realize that we only want the top. So we're going to stop on the line and we'll have to move it down each time. But still, this is a great shape in order to be able to do that. And if you notice, I have the hook on the back. So every time I move down, it's really easy just to get right into the hook, to get realigned. So it's very convenient. So that is a good question. So let me see. I think the space is 2 inches. No, 2.5. So you can see the space is 2.5. And this is about 3/8 of an inch. And the reason it's 3/8 is because I know that that will fit. I know this will fit at, I think 1 1/4 or something like that, because I tested it on paper. So I'll show you. This is where we're going. Doesn't that look awesome? So you'll have to play with that. And the reason that I marked it in is I didn't want these to be too far apart and not have a good overlap. So then I knew that this would fit, but I wanted to show you that you could float it in there, and then so you'll have a little space out here. Now the blue line, you could even sew that in if you wanted to, like if this was your seam and you wanted to sew this reference line in, there's nothing stopping you. But what we'll see here is that you'll essentially have this egg and dart where it's floating inside of these white chalk lines real quick. All right, let's do one more. All right, so as I said before, with the Fun and Fancy, this is a 3-inch, right? The space of the curve. So if you had, a nice easy way to mark that and you could plan for that in your border, then that would be an easy way for you to mark from the center at 3-inch increments and you wouldn't have any trouble. But we'll go ahead and we'll mark these just like we showed you. It's really, really worthwhile to make sure that you've got that beautiful look right there. All right, and we also need our line right here, so we'll kind of just stick this little guy down under there, get him lined right up on that line right there. That way we can make a nice visual reference line for ourselves. All right, and we'll just sew right up that line. And if I needed, to be right in the ditch or something like that, I would definitely use my straight edge, and my spacing gauge would be great. So when you have this back to back, remember to double check every time that you're using the correct side that you want. We want this deep side, and I can't tell you how many times I put it on and then I'm using the wrong side. So stick it into the hook right there. So here you're going to get that 1/4 inch overlap. It's not very much, but it will overlap. And that's always something that you want to play with. The deeper your overlap, the smaller your diamond will be, your little dart. I'm going to check that spacing. I didn't have as good of an alignment with that last diamond, so I want to make sure this one is going to be good. So maybe we'll give him a little tug. Make sure that he's going to behave. Okay, we'll do one more, checking it each time. You always wonder why it's off, but fabric has a mind of its own. It does its own thing. Now these are tight, but it's going to be okay. I'm going to show you something fun we're going to do with these that's going to make it look amazing. There's not a big overlap, but I'm going to show you how we can create a little bit more visual interest without worrying about that. Okay, so let me show you where we're at so far. So you can see that gives it such an amazingly different look. So visually to me, the diamond now is in charge, right? On this part, see how this part is so skinny right here, and the diamond really takes over, right? So it looks like this is the star and this part is just an accent, right? But let's keep going. All right, so I'm gonna just scoot over a little bit and let me show you what we're gonna do. So we still want this deeper side, but we need a little space to get this lined up. So notice right now that we've got the stitch line lined right up. So I think I need one more stitch back so I can get aligned. And now we're on this second reference line. So the first one was where we lined up before, and we're on that second line now. And now we're gonna make sure we're touching. Okay, and I want to be where my foot is touching right there. Actually, let's see if we can flip it. It might be easier this way. Perfect. Okay, and then I'm going to get everybody lined up. So I'm on the second reference line, and I'm lined up on that stitch line, and I'm right in the hook. And as I come around, where am I going to stop? I have the visual reference right there of the line, but I also have the foot. Right there, the foot should be touching. So I can manipulate this a little bit. If the fabric is not behaving, I can get right where I want to be. Make sure I'm touching. And just get right to where the foot's touching right there. And now I can line up the next one. Maybe one more stitch because he's not quite where he needs to be. There we go. All right, and then we'll do this last one. Now I would stop right here. If this was a seam, I would stop right there, and then I would travel up the seam and move over in order to get lined up. But because we have plenty of space, I'm just going to come down to the reference line. And let me show you what we got. Doesn't that look awesome? I love how it's turning out. This is one of my favorites. So I think this little embellishment really helps to make this design look so much richer and unique. And you know, you don't have to do it, but you certainly can do it. It's up to you. All right, we want to make sure we have room for our second line. Let's see, we're going to have to scoot up even more, I think, because we want to get lined right up. Let's see. Here we go. Let's get this guy lined up. This first one's always tricky. We'll do the first one with this side. So right here is our stitch line. Right there is the second line. So we'll just get ourselves right in there. Okay, and now we can flip it. Now it'll be easier. Oh, what did I do? Oh, there we go. That side. So I'm getting this lined up right here, making sure that everybody's on their spot. And stopping right on this line. Then I can move this. Now, let's do a little of the whole smushing thing. If I can't get both sides to line up, so let's say I have put this on there and the space here is bigger and I need to line up at the top. Here's how we manipulate for this design. You're going to sew to the top, right? And then you can make a small adjustment right here to get this lined up, and you'll never see the adjustment. Okay, so foot touching right there. And we'll make sure we're straight right there, and we'll do that last bit.
So what's the name of this template you're using? That roll you're using?
So the template that I'm using, I guess somebody just asked, this particular one is part of the back-to-back series, and this is the back-to-back 3" -2. And the reason it's called that is that it has two different measurements. There's actually 3 back-to-backs, and they have different depths each time. So this is 2 inches from the top to the bottom. So the spread of this S curve, if you measured from the bottom here to the top, that's a 2-inch span. Whereas on this side, you can see that this one is shallower. So from the curve here to the curve here, the span is 1.5 inches. And all of the back-to-back curves are featured like this with 2 different sizes. So this is the back-to-back 3-2, and this one is part of the Fun and Fancy collection. This template is in there. It's just such a great template. It does a lot of different designs. This is only one, but this is how it turned out. Look at how awesome that looks. If you needed some kind of like a Celtic embellishment, awesome. Just think it looks amazing. Let's see if we can get you a little flatter look at it. Our camera is just at a little angle that makes that difficult. Okay, so I will comment, I have a new thread today that I have not shared with you before. So the thread that I'm using is a variegated cotton thread. It's 40 weight, and it is from Connecting Threads, and it is really beautiful. And I'm using a 40 weight Isacord solid in the bobbin. So, you know, I always mix it up, whatever I think is going to look good. Let's see if you can see what's on the back. Yeah, so there you go. So that's your Isacord, and that's just a solid. And the reason I like a solid with a variegated is I don't want, the top is hard enough to not have dottiness. And if we have a solid on the other side, it's a lot easier to adjust the tension in order to have the best visual image. Okay, so let's go ahead, we'll tack this off. And we'll get these cut so we can move on. All right, so we're going to move to a different template really quick that's different than the ones we've already done. And that is the multi-mini arc. So let me grab that real quick. All right, so this is so easy to use. It's fantastic, and you can tell that compared to the oval, you're going to have, you know, a lot of different sizes on here, so you could do a potentially much larger border. So let's talk about how big can you do. If I'm using the largest, this is a 4-inch circle, so the span from the bottom across here is the 4 inches. But in terms of the egg and dart, it's going to sew at 2 inches, right? So say I have a 5-inch border. This is only 2 inches right here. If I tried to put this in a 5-inch border, this is not going to overlap because 2.5 and 2.5 would just kiss in the middle. So this wouldn't be the most appropriate size. So let's think about, say we have a 3-inch border. This is going to sew 2 inches up, and then the other one will sew 2 inches down. So potentially we could have some overlap there. The best thing to do is to make the size that you think that you're going to need, and to put your template physically right on there. And right away, you can see if this is your midline, you can just look and say, okay, I know that's more than a 1/4 inch, so it's going to be way out here. It's going to be a nice deep dip in here, and we'll get a big overlap. So here, if we use this 4-inch on this space, then we're going to have a nice huge overlap, and the orange peel that results are going to be big, and possibly our diamonds are going to be small. So we're going to go ahead and try that next. So let me give you the size really quick for this opening so you can see it. We'll have it here, that way if you need to come back to it later. So this opening is a 2.5, right? So it's going to definitely cut in. So if we did the 3 is only 1.5. It won't go as deep, but it would still probably work. Let's test it, right? So here's our 3. So you are going to get a 1/4 inch of overlap with the 3, and you'd get a 1/4 inch overlap from this side. So you'd have only that 1/2 inch overlap if we use the 3. So I think the 4 is going to give a lot more drama. So we'll go ahead and show that real quick. And again, if you have a 2-inch grid, you could definitely use a grid marking for this, because obviously the 4-inch circle is perfectly matched at 2 and 2. So you would have a lot of great reference lines, including a center line. So that's always useful. And the one thing I like about this, the mini arc, is you've got so many different sizes. So you have a lot of flexibility about choosing what is the size that you need. Now, the mini multi-arc is a 1/2 of a circle. So obviously, if you have any kind of circles, you can do this with a circle. So if you have the 2-inch circle or the 3-inch clamshell, both of those are great for doing this type of design. And you saw that we used, not a circle, we used the back-to-back, which is kind of an arc. So really you can do this with so many different things, but you have to know what your base is and what your height is. So here's what we have so far. You can see how big these are. They look awesome. So let's go ahead and get those marked. Make sure my lines are straight. I need to tip you guys just a little so I can get all lined up.
So a couple clarifications. Could you say again what weight was your bobbin thread?
The bobbin is a 40 weight and the top thread is also a 40 weight. That's a response to a question that we just got. So right now my thread weights are balanced. A lot of times I use a lighter weight thread in the bobbin, but not this time, not today. I'm just using both that are equally dramatic and equally heavy. And they look great. So you have a lot of flexibility to play with thread. People will ask me what is my favorite thread. I love anything that's good quality and that works. So I don't really have a thread. I don't say I'm not going to use this or I'm not going to use that. I just use whatever I want as long as it works. That's my criteria. It has to look good and it has to perform and not be finicky. Polyesters are much lower lint overall. So if you are a beginning ruler work person, they are a much stronger thread and they will be a little bit more flexible with push and pull. So if you're struggling and you're having some challenges, I highly recommend that you start with a polyester thread because it'll be a little bit easier. It's more forgiving. All right, so there's my measure. I'm perfectly where I need to be, and I want you to look right here and see what a beautiful, gigantic overlap that we're going to have with this. So anytime you're on a clamshell, as you come up to the top, it's pretty easy. It's when you're coming down that you fall off the mountain. So once we get to the top, we're going to keep our fingers right up in this clamshell. And when we get down on this side, you're going to think, keep touching, keep touching, keep touching all the way down to the bottom, just to make sure that you stay right connected. So we're a little bit off of the fabric there, so it's sticking a little bit. So always give yourself a little bit of extra space right there. Don't do what I did, which is really, really close to the edge here. All right, but I'll check my space one more time, make sure that we have it. Get my fingers right up in here. That way all the pressure is right next to the foot, so the ruler is not going to be popping. So real quick, I'll just hold this, but notice how if I held on this side, see how it's going to pop that up? So you got to get your fingers right up in there, right close to the foot. You should always be holding right near the foot. One more. And we'll do the last one. Okay, and we'll tack this off so we'll be able to cut that real quick and get this all out of your way so you can have a good view. All right, so let's pull everything, give you guys a nice good view. So you can see what a big amount of drama that you're going to get here with these really elongated diamonds and this big opening. Something like this is fantastic to be able to put some free motion fill in there. And then here, if the diamonds are big, it's also really fun to go ahead and echo the diamond. You can use the same arc, whatever you made this shape with. This is the same curve, so you can put that up there and you could echo a 1/4 inch away, and that's a great embellishment to put into these designs right here. Let's see, so do you ever place, so Sandy's question is, do I just put some extra fabric or old quilt sandwich? Yes, but then I have to manage 2 pieces, so I'm lazy and I didn't want to do that. But you can absolutely do that. It's no problem. If you were actually working on your quilt though, I will tell you, you should never have it this tight. Your backing needs to be at least about 2 inches or so bigger than the top with the batting. And that way, as the quilt shrinks up and it's quilted up, you're not going to run into any issues where you might not have enough batting in a certain spot, which has happened to me. Yeah, so this design is very symmetrical kind of a thing, and so a lot of people really like it. It's also easy and fast, and it is really simple to manipulate it to size. So a lot of people really like that, especially if you have a really narrow border, because the oval that we did right here, you can see that is perfect for a very narrow space, like a 1-inch border. It fits beautifully in there, and it's nice and elegant, and it's easy and fast. All right, so now we're going to kind of jump off the proverbial cliff a little bit. All right, so what do you think? Can this do the egg and dart? Maybe? What do you think? I don't think it'll look exactly like an egg and dart, but it could be kind of cool, so let's play with it. So we've made a space out here. This is not very big, and we want to make sure that we have overlap. So we've just got this narrow space here.
So a couple people have asked comments about like turning the corner on a border. Do you have any thoughts on any of these patterns, on either kind of how you would do that, or?
Yes, so that's a great question. So let's go ahead and we'll talk about that a little bit before we start our next bit. So if I want to turn the corner, right, I want to, if I have a little cornerstone right here, I can't guarantee that this diamond will fit in the cornerstone, but I could make sure that this half of a diamond starts at the cornerstone boundary, and then I could work towards the center. But what that means is if this, say that we know this is exactly 3 inches, right? Each one of these. Well, let's say that our border is not a multiple of 3. Let's say it's, 17. Well, what that means is you would work from the outside edge, right here, and you'd work towards the center until you got, either to there or there, depends on what will fit. And then you would have to stretch this last one to fit the center, right? And then you would stop it at the mark of the center. If this was the center, you'd mark this and you would stop there. Then you would go to the far end and you would work from this side towards the center. And then you would have to fudge this one to meet the center. And that would be how you would balance this design if you wanted the edges to match. If you want the center to match, you would start in the center, as we talked about, and you'd work to the outside, and then whatever you get on the right and whatever you get on the left, that's what you get. You can't have both, usually, unless your quilt is 100% perfectly measured exactly for your egg and dart template that you're using. Typically, you have to pick which is more important. Either the center is centered and matched, or the edges match the corner exactly, and then the center will have to be fudged. It's one or the other. And it's easy to do that. If you have a bigger gap here than your curve can fit, just grab another curve that's a little bit bigger, and then you can just fill that gap in pretty easily. And then typically I like to start in the center and work out, and then I'll just put something else in the corner. I think that's a little easier than trying to make it match. And something that is really simple that kind of echoes this design is that simple scallop. Like, let's pretend that this is our corner right here. You can just go like this. Oh, I didn't do a very good arc right there, like that. But that's a really simple cornerstone that connects the curvature right here. That would be a really easy way to turn the corner, and then you can have whatever happens out here, you can just make this line match right there. Whatever your last one is, either the end right here will end in the middle, or you can just forcibly make these lines come in to match right there if you want to, just by pivoting the template and making them touch right on the corners of this scallop. And that's a nice, easy way to put a little detail. And if you need more detail, you just echo this another time. If that's like a really big square, just echo it again and that'll fill it in. All right, so let's try with this crazy guy. So I'm gonna give you a little tip. I did play with it on paper, and I'll show you. This is the first one. This is a little too new agey for me. I'm not really liking it. It's really narrow right there, but this way I thought was kind of cool. I like that. So we're gonna do this. And what that means is that these are gonna face the same direction, because this is the half right here of the spinifex right there. And notice that the top follows in the same direction. So here they were different directions, and I didn't like that. It just didn't work for me. But you should try whatever you have. If you had hearts, you can do half of a heart on one side and half of a heart on the other side and see what you get, and maybe you'll get some kind of cool thing in the middle. If you have any of the loop-de-loops, you can try those because those are curvy and you can sew half of those. Let's see. So Linda, I'll post on my thread. I'll edit the post after I finish. I can't see the number right now, and I'd have to take the spool off, but I'll edit the post and I'll add the connecting threads thread number for you, okay? It definitely goes great on this raspberry fabric. I really like it. Okay, so let's get started. So we'll get everybody lined up, and we'll be looking behind as well, making sure we're lined up back there before we set our foot. Tuck it in there, and then you can pick up that thread. So just like we made the connecting marks, this one sews out at 5.5. So, oh goodness, can you guys see what's going on? Ah, what happened? Okay, I already set my thread, so I'm not taking it up again. So let's go ahead and get this guy off of there. Always work with your grips down. It's so important. Let's see. There we go. He was really ornery. I couldn't get him on. There we go. Make sure your tape is secure. If your tape isn't sticking well, change it out. Make sure that it's sticking pretty good. So we'll go this way, and we'll just do a couple of these just because they're kind of crazy, but they're fun. So, you know, what's the message with this crazy template? Play with what you have and see what you get. There's no rule. It doesn't have to be an oval. It doesn't have to be a circle. Some of them are going to make a design that's kind of unique and fun, and some of them might be ugly and you don't like them. But that definitely gives you the opportunity to get more use out of your template than you might otherwise. So let's go ahead and we'll take it off so we can mark those last bits, make our reference lines. So Joe Lewis, I use Scotch tape, the wide non-transparent. It's kind of like smoky, but it's just Scotch tape. And then I like to fold the end over. That's my little pull tab. Oh my goodness, my tape needs to be replaced. So I think I'll replace it right now. When your tape just comes off like that, it's probably a sign that it's brittle and you might need some new ones. So here, just take another piece, and then I just fold the corner like that, make my little 45 mark, and that gives me a little pull tab, which makes it so much easier. So I'm just going to stick it on here for a moment until we get our template back in place. Let's go ahead and make our reference marks. Anybody ever used anything else to make their sort of an egg and dart style? Let me know. Go ahead and put it in the comments for everybody else. That'd be so awesome. We'd love to hear what you think so that you can add in. All right, so we got our marks in there. We'll put this on. All right, so we better go to that other side. Hopefully we'll be in the right location. We'll check it with our spacing gauge to make sure that we can get it in there just right. So I want to put it a little bit closer here, right? Because what's really important is that it's not moving there. So don't necessarily have to worry about what's out here. You know, this tape isn't wide enough to cover the whole thing, so I want it to be secured up here. That's most important. All right, and we said we need to go the correct direction. So look, we've even got a little reference line right there that we can use to line up. So if, you know, it wasn't, we can manipulate a little bit, but that's going to give us just a little overlap on that first one. See, where are we? Are we on the line? We are. So we'll have to smush this just a little to make sure that we get in there. See, that's what happens when you're right on the edge there. You're gonna have to hold that fabric in place. Make sure it's not too crazy. And we'll do that last one and get everybody lined up. And I'm just gonna hold this to make sure he doesn't go wonky. So I think I got off a little bit there on the last one. That's okay, we'll just sneak right in there. Let's do some tacking. Let me get my scissors. We'll get those cut. And we'll cut these last little bits. All right, so does that look, you know, that's a little new agey, a little modern. But that's kind of cool. It has its own little thing, you know. Maybe that could go on a Southwest quilt. It kind of has a unique shape and could be used any old way. So I hope that this gave you guys a bunch of ideas about how you can make these borders and how you can vary them. I would try any template that I had. I mean, I have lots of different loop borders and the fish border and some different things like that. So those would be a great opportunity to use them in the same way. You just are going to make sure that you're marking wherever those intersections are, because you don't want your diamond to kind of go like that and be a little wonky-do. And another thing that's really fun with these type of designs, you could scoot the template over and use your spacing gauge and arc over, and you'll get sort of an echo effect, like a blurred image. And that also looks really, really good. So real quickly, I'm going to just start checking through the feed, make sure that I've gotten all of the questions. I was doing a crosshatch. Yeah, 4-inch arc from the sampler set. Absolutely, you totally can do that. The 4-inch arc is great. The problem for me with the 4-inch arc is it doesn't have a straight line to reference. So what you would have to do is mark the center lines of where the arc would be positioned. So let me grab that. In fact, I have it right here. Okay, so let's see if we have something dark. Can you grab me that blue envelope right there, babe? Thank you. All right, I'm going to put the 4-inch arc right here since I got it. So you can tell that there's no straight lines this way for reference. So you would have to mark a dot on whatever, you know, your reference line would be to align it here and essentially there. And then wherever your reference line is, you know, you would sew to the reference line and then you would realign there, because there's no horizontal lines on this that you would use for reference. But this would work. This is a circle essentially. I mean, there's your half circle right there. And just as we said, as if you continue further down, this is where it comes below the half circle. You would get those cool little loops instead of a diamond. You'd get a little overlap like that. So these are great, and these come in so many different sizes. They would be great for doing this type of design as well. All right, so let's see what else we got here.
Where do you get your Fons and Porter chalk pencils?
I get it from my local quilt shop, my Fons and Porter chalk pencil. And also, I do believe they probably even have these at Joann's. I think I've seen them there as well. But I do support my local quilt shop, so I definitely get them there. And usually you can buy the pen by itself, or you can even buy them with one package of replacement lead. And I do prefer the white. Sometimes there's other pens or pencils, like Soline has black or I don't know, different colors. White is the best one. All the other ones, sometimes they come off, sometimes they don't. I don't want to deal with that. I just like the white one. All right, my ruler foot is something white as the one being used here. Okay, so I'm going to answer Amanda, your question. You said that your ruler foot is not as wide as the one being here. Okay, this foot is a 1/2 inch in diameter. And with the needle in the center, it is a 1/4 inch to every side of the foot. So no matter where my template is touching as it sews, the needle is always the same distance, whether it's on the inside or the outside or the back or the front. If your ruler foot has a tall sidewall, but it is skinnier than this, the chances are that you have a 1/4 inch ruler foot, which does not work with the Westalee templates. The Westalee templates are designed to work with a 1/2 inch ruler foot. That doesn't mean that you can't use that other one. It's just not going to give you the accurate results like we had today. You would have to use those with 1/4 inch templates in order for that to be effective for you. So all of our Westalee templates use a 1/2 inch ruler foot, just to make sure everybody's clear. All right, so let's see. All right, I'm still looking through your feed. Thank you, Robbie Carpenter. I'm glad that it met the need. I hope that that will help you with your plans for the future.
For those chalk lines, do you just rub them off, or do you have to get them wet, or
so
rub off with heat, or iron off heat?
These are not iron off. These are erasable. So I actually have this magic eraser, and I just would come back in here and yep, I would actually erase them. And then once you get most of it off, then once you wash the quilt, the rest of it will come off. But you don't want to like put this in the wash with all these white lines. You do want to take a little bit of time and get them off. But they'll come off. There you go. See? All right. So let's see. So if you missed anything, you feel free to go back and see it again. I'm going to do a little commercial for a second, okay? For those people that are just joining us, if you've never seen my work before, this is our Fun and Fancy book. And let's see, I'll kind of move out just a little bit so you can get a better view. So we used 3 of the templates that are in this Fun and Fancy collection. There's 5 templates in there. And I'll just open to my table of contents right there. So you can see there's a lot of designs, so many different ideas for how you can use these tools. And so many of the things that I show you, you might be able to use other templates as well. I talk about, you know, how to create the design, how to make the path, what is the steps, tips for how to do it better, how to adjust things, how to measure things, how to mark things. So the Fun and Fancy book, it's $28 if you want to buy it by itself, but I do recommend that you buy the templates with it because it is specifically designed to work with those 5 templates. So if you buy the book and you don't have that, then it's kind of defeating your design potential. So we are offering that as a special incentive. If you buy the bundle, you're going to get the awesome teal spacing gauge, which is an $8 value. So you essentially are getting $8 off. And what you get with the bundle for $75 is you get the book and you get the template bundle. So this is Circles on Quilts 21, Spin Effects number 8, the 1-inch circle. This is the back-to-back that we used today. And then this is the 3 by 1.5 inch oval. And it does come with the inner oval and the outer oval. So you get actually 2 different templates. So it's really 6 potential templates that you get with that grouping. In addition to getting your Fun and Fancy set, if you get that, I have a free class that is part of the purchase. You will have a coupon inside of the bundle, and there is about a 3-hour free class, which includes some free motion embellishment class that's called the Fun and Sassy Tabletopper, and that is a $25 value. In addition to that, there is a $150 class that I have on the So Steady University, which is almost 13 hours of education that details all of the designs in the book. And it shows you how I fudge and how I mark and how you can use them and answers questions. Plus you have access to me through So Steady University. If you have any questions, I definitely am responding to anybody that asks questions about that material. You're not out there on your own. I'm actually supporting that as well. And the coupon for that is $75 off of that class. So you would be able to have that class for $75 if you would like to participate in that as well. So we offer a starter class to get you going, but if you want to go more in depth and you want to purchase additional lessons, then we also have that available for you. So thank you for letting me push my commercial on you. I hope that's okay. And let's see, I'll just check that last question and then we'll be done. All righty. Why don't I use an iron-off pen? Noel Fisher, I'm going to answer your question. So I had a white iron-off chalk pen. I used it on a customer quilt. I was never so sorry in my life. I had a car accident in between and the chalk was on there for quite a while and it did not come off. And I just don't want to play that game. So I have a very limited marking set that I will use. I use a Fons and Porter pen, the purple Air Erase. And if I don't need a fine line, I use the Boheme Fat Chalk Pencil. And I also showed you the general pastel pencil that I use today. So a lot of white pencils and the purple Air Erase. I do use the blue, but very sparingly, only when nothing else will work, and the blue is the only one that will work because I don't like to have to get things wet in order to get the marks off. So there you go. That's what I said about that. All right. And, you know, if you bought Fun and Fancy and you liked it and people are asking about it, if you would just say if you liked it or not. I mean, you don't have to. If you don't like it, I hope you love it. But, you know, I'm not asking you to say anything that you don't want to say. But if you felt like you were happy with it and you were willing to have a testament of that, that would be great. So I do think Fun and Fancy is very useful and valuable for beginners. I did not write it for somebody that is like super awesome quilter and doesn't need you. It is the path to ruler work quilting, and it is an integrated starter. Some of the designs are easier and some are harder. That's just the reality of any kind of quilting designs. But I do take you through all of the designs one step at a time, and I talk about how you can mark them. And, you know, fudging is always good. So that's just the real deal. Kate, yes, you can get it in the UK. We do have dealers that have that. You may have to wait a little bit longer, especially with COVID, but I do know that some of our educators do have it. So if you wanted to put a note on here, if any of my So Steady partners in crime or shops from the UK are willing to support Kate, that would be great. Just put a note in this post. That way people can see that and they would know if they can contact you or not. Okay. All right, so that's it, you guys. We are done. I hope you had a great time. And if you do some of these designs, please post them in this post. We'd love to see what you're doing. We definitely want to. Okay, so I'm going to say thank you and good night. And I ask, please, that you could like and share my post so that we can share this information with other people who might have an interest in it. And I will also be posting this on YouTube in the next couple of days for anybody that has friends that do not use Facebook. Obviously you do because you're here. But if you have friends that are not happy with Facebook for whatever reason or just don't feel comfortable, it will be posted on Quilting with Kate Quinn of Fabricated Quilts on my YouTube page, and I will put a note out about that. So this information will be readily available in different mediums. Okay, thank you, Ling, for your question, and thank you guys. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Free Motion Fridays on Fabricated Quilt at 10 o'clock Mountain Standard Time in the morning, where I share free motion fills that could be useful for working with your ruler designs. So if you want to see that, check me out. Have a great night, you guys. Dawn, you can message me. Dawn Hamilton asked where she could order Fun and Fancy. I can order it for you if you message me, or it is available on the So Steady website, and you can order it direct from them. Either way, your timeline is the same amount of time. You're not going to get it any sooner or later. It's the same. So have a great night, you guys. Bye-bye.